And we are live back again, chatting about Fury versus Ngannou, the recap that no one's been waiting for. Welcome back, guys. Hope everyone's doing good. The weekend didn't have a ton of action. Admittedly, we didn't have a UFC card. There wasn't. I think there was one championship action on Friday. They had that 4 ounce kickboxing and 4 ounce Muay Thai back again. But outside of that, I don't think championship action on Friday. There we go. Okay. Mic works. I'm always concerned about the mic. I'm always concerned it's not plugged in, or maybe it is plugged in, but it's malfunctioning. The things that go through my head. But yeah, so I mean, this weekend was really, I think, centered around Francis Ngannou and Tyson Fury. This has been a good build-up. I don't want to say some of the most enjoyable press conferences we've seen. Tyson Fury and Ngannou had some interesting moments. John Fury in the buildup was as expected and pretty much clinically insane. Kind of like we know. I mean, anytime John Fury is out and about, there's problems quickly following. And this buildup was no exception. I am not sure what anyone thought heading into this, but I personally did not anticipate Francis Ngannou to have much success. I know that he is a true killer, and you looked at his performances in the UFC, the amount of knockouts and finishes he has. Jairzinho Rosenstrike, the Miocic finish. You could go all the way back to Overeem, JDS. He really is a bulldozer. But there's such a difference, between mixed martial arts striking and boxing, pure boxing. It's almost not comparable. And we've seen a lot of mixed martial artists struggle. You think about Conor McGregor when he fought Floyd Mayweather, which isn't a great example. Admittedly, not a great example. Fighting one of the best boxers of all time and losing. I mean, no shame there. But I think there was someone who counted it, and there was like about 12 different notable mixed martial artists that had transcended, and really only a few were successful. And even then, it's not like they were against people like Tyson Fury, who is the champion. I mean, he is the undisputed heavyweight champ. Well, actually, no, I think Usyk has the belts, if I'm not mistaken, or there's some belts that are Tyson's, some that aren't. I will say, admittedly, I don't follow boxing exclusively that much. It's just not something I'm truly interested in. But Tyson, 33-0-1, I think was his record coming into this. Obviously, some really notable performances over the likes of Deontay Wilder the last couple years, and a few bouts in between all that. I will say this, inactivity. That's been just the main takeaway for me in boxing, especially that heavyweight division. You see guys that just fight so infrequently, and I'm like, how am I supposed to get invested in these people and their careers and whatnot when they're fighting maybe once every 18 months or something like that, or they're fighting guys who have no business being in there with them. I think, what was it, Dillian, who was Fury's last opponent? Dillian White, a guy he'd beaten like twice already and wasn't close those first two matchups. So it's like, why are we doing a trilogy when you could have Anthony Joshua, or you could have maybe even done the Usyk fight sooner than it is, which that's neither here nor there. Let's get back to that. That's off, I guess, right? December 23rd. That was supposed to be Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk. And what I'm hearing from Frank Warren, who went on record the other day stating this, and Frank, I think, is one of the commissioners or something. Again, boxing, there's too many sanctioning bodies and belts. You're never going to have a grasp on all of them. But some, I guess, notable figure that's involved with the fight said, hey, it's not happening. December 23rd, we're not running it. Usyk and Fury is done. So you gotta feel for Usyk in this situation. He is watching his millions unfold. That was going to be an amazing Christmas present for one Ukrainian, Alexander Usyk. But if that matchup does vanish, I'm really frustrated because, again, I mean, that's the legitimacy. That's Tyson Fury facing real contenders, real problems within that weight class, and not guys like Francis Ngannou. Again, not to be disparaging. I don't want it to be confused in that way, shape, or form. But I just don't, a lot of people looked at this as a gimmick fight. It's a gimmick matchup. And I can't help but understand that perspective coming into it. I mean, Tyson Fury is on top of the world. He is probably the number one or number two heavyweight on planet Earth, and we've got a UFC heavyweight champion, lineal UFC heavyweight champion, taking him on. And I don't know. I mean, I again, the gambling, the betting odds reference this a lot better than I can articulate. I think Fury was minus 1,500, at one point minus 3,000 or something like that. Ngannou was plus 800, I think, when the fight started. And then what's crazy is during the fight, let's talk about how the fight actually went. We'll get into that. During the fight, Francis Ngannou at one point in time, the live odds swung and he was the favorite. I think it was like minus 125. Ngannou was heading into the last round or the last couple rounds. I'm not sure when exactly the swing happened, but I saw a screenshot of it, so it did happen. And I think it's telling of how the fight really went. An all-time bad performance from Tyson Fury, and a hell of a debut by Francis Ngannou. I mean, there is not a single person on earth that can say anything negative about what Ngannou accomplished on Saturday night. I mean, it's unreal. It truly is crazy that he could go from not having the biggest fundamentals, and I don't wanna knock him at all. I hope it doesn't come across that way, but Ngannou's striking was very wild, and he took many risks, and there was a lot of big movements, associated with it. Look at the Jairzinho Rozenstruik finish. I mean, he literally just said, "Fuck this, I wanna get home early," and took Roz's head off with these gigantic windmill punches. I didn't anticipate him to look educated in the ring in pure striking. I assumed that he was gonna roll up, throw a couple windmills, try and land that big right hand, and ultimately get TKO'd. That's what I assumed was gonna happen, but he's using the jab effectively, really patient performance from him. He wasn't rushing in. He wasn't giving Fury many openings. I think Tyson thought that Francis was gonna come out there and look fish out of water, out of his depth, which I think is fair. I mean, I think that's a fair thing to expect and assume, and that's just not at all how it happened. And I think it was round 3 or round 6 when the knockdown occurred. What a unreal moment that's now cemented in history. The lineal UFC heavyweight champion knocking down Tyson Fury. It's just crazy, and I know that Fury gets knocked down, I don't wanna say frequently because, again, I'm trying not to be a dick or disrespectful, but, I've seen him get knocked down. Deontay put him down, um, early in his career. I've seen clips of guys putting him down, so, it was possible, but I just did not think that Ngannou would be able to do it, especially on a check left hook, right over, Tyson's shoulder, catching him above the ear and planting him on the canvas for a moment. And, Tyson today had a pretty nasty black eye. He was doing an interview. I can't remember with who, but he was like, "Yeah, Ngannou doesn't hit hard, and nothing really affected me." And I'm like, "Well, dude, look at your eye. Look at the damage on your face. I don't think that you can." I don't think you can sit here and talk about how he doesn't have power when clearly he does. So I think in terms of the biggest loser from this scenario, it's certainly Tyson Fury, because what a tough thing to go through in terms of the court of public opinion. Like, people are going to go, "Wow, you got knocked down by Francis Ngannou," for probably the rest of his career, unless he goes out there and just annihilates Alexander Usyk, and kind of changes the current sentiment. I think that it's gonna be such a pain in his ass, until he hangs him up, which, again, with Fury's inactivity, um, who knows when that's gonna be? I mean, it could be tomorrow, it could be next week, could be 5 years from now. I'm not sure when that guy's really done. And for Francis Ngannou, right, you gotta think about, okay, well, what's next? I know he's talked about a couple things, and God, there are options. There are now some really interesting options, and it's cool to see Francis live out his dream. He didn't want to do mixed martial arts. He wanted to be um, boxing. That was his initial focus, and then MMA. He fell into it, right, in France with Oh, I'm trying to think of the guy's name. He owns the MMA Factory. Fernand Lopez, I think that was the first, coach that he'd had, if I'm not mistaken, which I might be. I mean, I don't have a script. I'm just sitting here on a fucking beanbag chair. But it's really interesting to see the full circle of Ngannou, where, the pro boxing is now at his hands. I mean, it's in the palm of his hand. You know, you got Deontay Wilder. That's a great fight. You have an Anthony Joshua matchup, which I think would be really cool to see. Following Joshua's performances against Usyk, how can Ngannou deal with those guys? And I would be tough if after this Francis gets in there and then gets nuked or has a really bad performance. Again, because people are just trying to say, "Hey, this was an off night for Tyson." What if it wasn't? What if it wasn't an off night for Tyson? And what if Francis Ngannou is just kind of that guy, right? Could you imagine a world where late next year or maybe even 2025, Francis gets in there for the belts, and becomes the undisputed boxing heavyweight champion of the world after he's accomplished what he's done in mixed martial arts? It'd be unprecedented. I mean, that is something that catapults him into combat sports, not even just sports Hall of Fame, upper echelon of any athlete from any era, from any sport. That level of accomplishment would really put Francis Ngannou into the most elite company when people remember him and his career and what he's done. And it's a shame that the UFC and him have obviously boiled their relationship to a real unsalvageable level, because a fight with John Jones would be the next, I don't want to say next best thing, but if there was ever a mixed martial arts return that would be optimal, that would be ideal. And I recognize that there's the PFL um, contract that he has, and the work that he's doing with that organization. But question that I keep seeing people say, why do it? Why go back to the PFL? That's kind of a step down, going from fighting Tyson Fury, knocking him down, and then heading back to the smart cage. I mean, um, I think that there's more value for Francis in boxing, and I'd love to see him in mixed martial arts and continue the 4-ounce glove journey. But who do you put him in there with? I mean, what PFL heavyweight attracts attention and has the marketability that now Francis Ngannou has achieved? I mean, this is a guy who's now transcended just MMA, um, and just combat sports. Where I'm not saying complete stardom, you know, but he has really enlarged the footprint that he carries now. And what, Hanan Ferreira, Maurice Green, uh, Ante Dalia, like um, where do you put Francis next? In my mind, it has to be something big, and John Jones is the biggest there is. And with the beef, I don't know if I would say beef. Let me rephrase that. With the history that they've shared, the stare downs at events, and obviously the back and forth on social media, that it just makes the most sense. But again, where it currently stands, I don't think the UFC and Dana are interested in it, which sucks because Luke Thomas pointed this out. There's nothing stopping them from doing it. What's stopping them? What is stopping them from doing Francis Ngannou and John Jones? Wha Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Um, there's no contracts that are restricting Ngannou from that matchup, or the UFC from creating it. There's no existing plans right now. Again, Francis is kind of a clear calendar. We'll see what he does next, and I'm very interested and looking forward to it. But that is up in the air. That is TBD. So it just comes down to them not wanting to do it, which is insane. I mean, imagine you did Ngannou versus Jones in March or April, even, right? Headline a pay per view. How many do you think they sell? How many pay-per-views does Ngannou versus John Jones sell? That's the real question. And dare I say 1.5? Dare I say 2? Where is that ceiling for what we have now with Ngannou, and what an MMA return against the GOAT would be? I think it's I think it's just tough that the UFC is not at a point where they can maybe swallow their own issues and recognize this is the best thing that we can do for heavyweight right now. As excited I am for Tom Aspinall and Sergey Pavlovich to have their interim title fight, and I am excited. I mean, that matchup is bonkers. That's an insane matchup. And it is awful that John Jones is injured, and I do hope and pray that he recovers quickly and that there aren't any complications. He's going to be probably 37 when he's completely healed from this. I think they said 8 months. He's in the twilight of 36 right now. So 37-year-old John Jones coming off of an injury, taking on the next generation in Pavlovich or Tommy Aspinall. That's a tall task, man. Like, I don't know if John Jones wants to do that. Does Jones want to do that? Would a matchup with Ngannou entice him more? Would it make more sense? Those are the questions that I think he's gonna have to face next year if he wants to do it at all. Maybe that was it. Maybe that is the sad conclusion and an anticlimactic and an unfortunate end to his career. Maybe this injury is it. How does he come back at 37? That's not guys, that's not young. But at the same time, I don't think Francis Ngannou is young either. I think he's mid-30s as well. So, we've got a time we got a clock and it's ticking. The time's burning away. But I don't know. I think Ngannou, if he wants to box again, let's break it up this way. If he's gonna box, I think Deontay Wilder makes the most sense. Hardest hitter in boxing versus the hardest hitter in mixed martial arts. I thought that sold just as good as Tyson Fury. Call me crazy. But I thought the Wilder and Ngannou matchup sold on paper just as good. I think there's enough marketing angles. Um, Deontay's got enough of a record and history built out in the division, and it'd be a firefight. I mean, I don't think that would go the distance. Either Ngannou crumbles or Wilder crumbles, and I think that's the one that I would book next. Again, like I mentioned earlier, if Anthony Joshua is interested, if Anthony Joshua wants Francis Ngannou, why the hell not? Again, two gigantic, chiseled individuals going at it, who are at the top of their respective disciplines. And if Ngannou can get a win over AJ or Deontay, I mean, again, there is nothing preventing him from a potential shot at a couple belts. You know what I mean? There's nothing preventing him. And if I'm the PBA or the BBOC, whatever the sanctioning bodies are, again, I don't know boxing that well. I would push for an Ngannou title fight if he's able to get by one of these guys. And then yeah, I mean, we haven't even talked about a Fury rematch. We haven't even talked about running it back with Tyson, which is he's got to fight Usyk first. That's in my opinion. He's got to fight Usyk first. I don't understand why we would rush to a rematch. Give Francis some more time. Have him get another fight, some more legs in the boxing heavyweight division, and then maybe run it back again down the line. I don't want to. There's no point to rush it, especially if there's no rematch clause. I mean, nobody's. Neither of the competitors are asking for a rematch, so I'm not going to. I'm going to look to different matchups that are equally as interesting. So that's boxing. Those are the three things with Deontay Wilder being what I would say. Oh, jeez. What I would say is the more intriguing matchup that you make moving forward. If he goes back to mixed martial arts, what do you do? What do you do? Is it PFL? Does Francis Ngannou say, you know what, I'm a little too big for that now, and reneges on his contract with them? I think we'll see. I think the PFL, they were posting a lot about the fight and obviously the knockdown and celebrating Francis. So I think he's got a home there, and whatever Francis does next, I would assume it'll be in the smart cage with the PFL. But again, the question is opponent. Opponent. Who do you put in there with Francis Ngannou? That's a harder one to answer. That is a harder one to answer. I mean, it's easy to answer comedically. Parker Porter, Chris Barnett, a lot of great options. I'm not sure who proposed this. It might have been Aaron Bronsteter, but someone said Vadim Nemkov. They said Vadim Nemkov would be the perfect opponent. Fedor Emelianenko's protege, currently the Bellator light heavyweight champion. I would be interested to see it. Hey, Vadim, get him some more meat on the bones, thicken up by a couple pounds, and then take on Ngannou in the smart cage after the Bellator sale uh, is done and wrapped up. I wouldn't hate it. I think Ryan Bader could be another option. Granted, Bader is old, and I think Ngannou could probably deal with him like how he dealt with Cain Velasquez, you know, which in other words is easy. Again, no disrespect, but Francis Ngannou versus Ryan Bader. Oh, I mean, we know how that's going to go. So I think Vadim Nemkov is an interesting shout. I think maybe even Corey Anderson. Corey Anderson is a top. I don't know if he's the number one or number two guy, but top ranked Bellator light heavyweight. A lot of people thought he beat Vadim Nemkov or should have been beating him last year at like Bellator 268. But clash of heads results in a no contest. And then, he really struggled in that second fight with Nemkov. So I don't know, maybe Corey Anderson could be another shout, former UFC alumni as well. That could be quite interesting. Or if Ngannou and the UFC are able to come back together and if they can mend that bridge. I mean, think about how exciting Francis Ngannou versus Sergey Pavlovich would be. Think about how exciting Francis Ngannou versus John Jones again. I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but to return to that matchup, that would be one of the biggest matchups of all time, of all time. And who knows how it would go? I mean, Jones is such a tricky guy and a cerebral fighter that it's hard to bet against him. But at the same time, with the age now, with this injury, with the momentum and steam, and how Ngannou was really handling people as a champion and a challenger and a contender when he was with the UFC, it's like, I mean, good luck, John. Good luck. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. The other thing is the scoring. It was a split decision for Tyson Fury. One judge did give it to Francis Ngannou. I think it was 96-93, and then 94-95 with one going to Francis, one going to Tyson. The 96-93 card is interesting. And, again, full disclosure, I was not able to watch the much of the fight. I caught rounds like 7, 8, and then parts of 9, and then a little bit of 10. So the latter half of the fight, but the first half of the fight, and then the knockdown, I wasn't able to watch it. I was at my brother's wedding, so my attention was on that, and we had the ceremony, and I was part of that. Was a groomsman, right? So part of the bridal party. There's a lot of other things I had going on that absorbed my attention, but was able to catch a couple clips, and it again seemed very even. I thought Tyson's jab wasn't as pronounced as it usually was. I don't think that he was popping it out as frequently as I was anticipating him to. I think the lack of success was really frustrating him. I bet he said something about how he could drink 25 liters of beer and then go beat Francis Ngannou. So like, and that's Tyson Fury. The smugness is anticipated. The smugness and the arrogance is what I figured would be there. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't think that Tyson was again firing on all cylinders, and Francis was just so patient and so composed. You didn't see him really overreacting to punches or swinging all that wildly. It was calm, measured, a lot of lead hand work, a lot of jabs, a lot of left hooks, and then of course the big one that had gotten through. I thought he was gonna really swing off with that right hand a couple more times, but it was a smart effort, and that's all down to Eric Nixick and Dewey Cooper up there in Vegas with Ngannou. They have just molded him into this unbelievable specimen, and he's clearly a sponge. I mean, he clearly picks up everything that they put down and implements what they cover in practice, which is just exceptional to see the development. You think about him being in the sand mines 10 years ago in Cameroon and what he has built and accomplished, and it's I mean, guys, the only applicable word for Francis Ngannou is inspiring. It's inspiring. How can you look at that story and not be inspired, not be motivated to get up off the couch and do something. That's the beauty of Francis Ngannou. And the same can be said for Tyson Fury. Not to uh, really put his journey on the back burner, but what he's dealt with through the substance abuse and the mental health and rallying back and I know the personality and the family rubs a lot of people the wrong way, and maybe they bring some some unnecessary hate onto their shoulders. But again, what Tyson Fury has done and achieved is nothing short of inspiring and remarkable as well. So it was a really great collision of these titans of self achievement and self. Well, I'm trying to think. Just self made. I mean, just two self made guys going at it. No shortcuts in that main event. But that was it. I mean, that was really the only combat sports that we had over the weekend. I'm trying to think about the one championship card if I remember any of the names associated with it, but it was really it was really all Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou, which is kind of curious. I would have thought that Dana would have done something Saturday night, right? Put some card together to try and outshine or take the limelight away or make some announcements. A lot of people were making jokes about, breaking news. Dana's got the a Conor McGregor fight to announce or XYZ. I was fully expecting that and didn't come. Didn't come. So, and the thing is, I mean, if Francis didn't have as good of a performance as he did, the question that I have is, would Dana be vocal about it? Right? That's the question. Is if Francis didn't look great, would Dana be hopping online and further the pounding into the canvas, right? And I don't want to say yes. You know what I mean? Um, but I'm sure he'd have something to say about it. If Francis got embarrassed, if Francis went out there and got completely manhandled, I'm sure that he might have said something. Um, so it is interesting. But next week we've got let me see what next week's UFC card is. I think it's UFC. Nope. Every time I try and Google the auto selector pops in and it's all fucked. So we've got Jalton Almeida and Derek Lewis fighting on November 4th. So that is what is upcoming. I don't think that was the original matchup, right? If I'm not incorrect, I think Derek Lewis is popping into this one on somewhat shorter notice. Enemy territory against again a grappling specialist, a jiu-jitsu. Um, I mean, Demon, he's a problem. Jalton Almeida is on the ground, and I'm not sure if Derek Lewis's stand up and BJJ is fake is going to work against him. It's worked many times. It's hard to bet against Derek Lewis's ability to just completely negate the effectiveness of grappling and just completely neutralize any jujitsu guy's success. I remember when he fought Alexei Olenek. Olenek had him in like that scarf tie hold and some deep submissions, but he couldn't submit him. His neck was too fat. And Alexei eventually had to give up the grip and was TKO'd, I think, the round afterwards. So maybe we'll see another Derek Lewis moment where it's vintage Black Beast and Jalton can't do anything and then finds himself on the wrong side of a right hand and the all-time KO leader extends it by one more. I mean, that would be as much as I like Jalton Almeida and as much as I think that division needs new contenders and new blood constantly coming up to keep it alive, it would be funny as hell if Derek Lewis gets another meme KO. I was betting really heavy on Marcos Rogerio de Lima last time out, and Lewis flying kneed him and got it done in 40 seconds. So, I it's one of those things where it's a guy that I love betting on in Jouton and a guy that is hard to bet against in Derek Lewis, so you never know. Um, but yeah, I did think it was just a bit peculiar that there wasn't some UFC event or some UFC thing going on that could have taken some limelight and shine away. But maybe that's it is. Maybe that's Dana not maybe Dana's cooled off a little, right? Maybe Dana's like, hey, we'll let him have the moment. We'll clear the schedule for Francis. Who knows? Maybe tides are changing. Probably not. I would doubt it. I would doubt it. But I don't know. I mean, I again was not able to watch the entire fight, but from what I saw, I was very impressed. And I think that what Francis Ngannou can do in boxing is, I mean, really incredible. And I think he can shake things up, especially if he fights someone like Wilder or Anthony Joshua next. I think those two fights would be terrific. Again, a lot of shadows on when the PFL stuff will happen. I know by the end of the year, I think they said they wanted to do some smart cage stuff. I don't know too fully what the plan is. I'll ask actually next month. We've got the championships coming up, so I'll softball the question because clearly PFL loves Francis Ngannou, and I think he's got a lot of love for them as well. Because you think about it, he bet on himself and it worked out, and PFL has been really helpful, I would say, to him in terms of I don't want to say extending olive branch isn't the right word, but a new home. I mean, a next stop after UFC where he's getting compensated, he's getting everything he wants, um, and his opponents are getting treated fairly as well. So I think the love that they showed Francis, he'll show right back. That's the hope, anyways. For Tyson, Usyk, train a little harder, take it a little more serious, and go put on a great show with Usyk. I think he definitely was overlooking Francis, and I can't say that I totally blame his real nonchalance about Francis Ngannou. But I think it's an eye opener, man. It's an eye opener that anyone can catch you, and every opponent is an opponent. And when you're in there, you gotta be at your A game. You can't be waltzing into these opportunities and these fights with a shitty training camp and a mentality that causes you to overlook people. Can't overlook anyone in combat sports. All it takes is one punch. Um, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I think that to touch on the fight a little bit more, again, the scoring, who knows? But MMA definitely came out on top that night. I think mixed martial arts finally had a good night in boxing. And even though Francis didn't get the win, he got the win. That's the people's champ. And I think the social media reception echoes it. It was nothing but celebration of Francis and what he did. Um, and I expect that to continue. But that's all. I mean, this is kind of a quicker stream, but again, we had one matchup to talk about as opposed to a card of different results and different finishes and whatnot. So we're gonna stop it a little bit early. But yeah, let me know. We'll be back next week, I believe on Wednesday. So make sure you tune in, and I'll see you then.